The day the human warship entered the galactic field, every other fleet turned to look. Thousands of bright vessels from across the stars floated in perfect formation, their engines glowing like streams of fire and glass. In that endless stretch of black space, the human ship looked like an old memory, large, slow, and worn down by time. Its armor was dark and heavy, the kind that spoke of steel and not the shiny alloys the other species used. The thrusters sputtered softly, not blazing like the others. It moved at a patient pace, steady but unimpressive. No one said it aloud at first, but the laughter began soon after. Communication channels buzzed quietly at first, then louder. The alien officers joked about the slow human barge that had dared to show up at a galactic exercise meant for elite war fleets. Some compared it to an asteroid with engines. Others said it looked like a cargo hauler that had wandered into the wrong place. From the command decks of those sleek ships, their crews grinned, shaking their heads at the sight. The humans had arrived late, and by the looks of it, centuries behind. The human crew, though, didn't react. Inside the ship, men and women moved calmly through dim corridors. The light was low, the metal cold, the hum of the engines deep and steady. The ship had a kind of heartbeat, slow but strong. The crew knew the others were mocking them. The open frequencies made sure of that, yet no one answered. The human captain sat quietly, eyes fixed on the monitor, while the rest of the crew followed routine checks as if they couldn't hear the insults bouncing between fleets. The galactic joint exercise was supposed to test cooperation, a chance for civilizations to learn how to fight together in the face of greater threats. But to most alien commanders, it was more of a contest, a stage to show off speed, precision, and weapon power. That was why the human ship felt out of place. Everything about it was slow. Even its sensors rotated at half the speed of modern scanners. Its armor looked decades old, maybe even older. And the name carved into its hull, Aegis Dawn, sounded more poetic than practical. As the other ships practiced formation drills, the human ship stayed behind. It didn't chase targets or perform flashy maneuvers. It just moved at its own pace, adjusting quietly, scanning patiently, almost as if it were studying everyone else. The aliens saw it as a sign of weakness, a species that didn't belong in this new era of warfare. One alien officer even transmitted a public message saying the humans should retire their museum ship before it became space dust. The laughter that followed echoed across the channels, but the humans never answered. Their ship didn't increase speed, didn't fire a single test shot. It simply drifted with purpose, following an invisible path only its crew seemed to understand. Deep within the ship, engineers worked in silence, watching old machines come to life, systems humming softly after long years of rest. They weren't polishing for show. They were preparing for something. The kind of preparation that didn't need to be loud. The alien commanders couldn't understand why the humans had even joined the exercise. Humanity hadn't fought a real war in centuries. Most galactic species thought humans had become peaceful traders, thinkers, and explorers. They had forgotten that long ago humanity's wars had shaped how space fleets even existed. Now, seeing this slow ship, they felt certain humanity's time as a military power was long gone. The first simulation began 2 days later. Fleets were assigned mock targets in a vast asteroid field. Ships darted between the rocks with perfect grace. Bright trails of light crossed the void as simulated weapons fired in controlled bursts. The human ship again stayed behind. It didn't even activate its main weapons. Sensors showed its targeting systems offline, its engines operating at half output. To the observers, it looked like the humans weren't even trying. Typical humans, one alien voice said over the general channel. Always slow, always behind. On the command deck of the Aegis, the crew could hear it all. But their faces stayed calm. They ran diagnostics, adjusted course, and watched. The captain gave a single quiet order: maintain observation. Those were the only words spoken for hours. Every alien fleet outperformed the humans that day. The final report ranked the Aegis last. 0 simulated kills, 0 maneuver points. Commentators across the galaxy called it embarrassing. Some said humanity had sent the ship only to save face, not to win. Others joked it was a training ship meant for cadets. The laughter became louder, and even the galactic news feeds joined in, showing side-by-side comparisons between the Aegis and the newest alien cruisers. But not all laughter came from arrogance. A few alien captains watched more carefully. They noticed small things: The Aegis always moved just outside of formation, never interfering, yet always staying in perfect radar range. It scanned each ship, every weapon type, every pattern of movement. It wasn't acting lost. It was learning. One alien officer described it as a predator pretending to be old. But his commander laughed and dismissed the thought. Inside the Aegis, the atmosphere was different. Every movement was deliberate, every silence meaningful. Old panels flickered with strange data. The ship's systems were layered, one network visible, one hidden. The visible systems looked ancient, outdated. The hidden systems whispered in soft codes only the humans could read. They weren't participating in the drills. They were studying everything the galaxy had built since humanity's last war. Every scan, every signature, every pulse was being recorded and analyzed. To the crew, the outside noise didn't matter. They had seen this before. Underestimation was humanity's oldest companion. Whenever the galaxy thought humans were weak, they tended to learn the truth too late. But even inside the ship, no one spoke proudly. There was no ego, no boasting, only quiet professionalism, like soldiers carrying an old secret. The ship's slow engines, mocked by everyone else, had a purpose. They weren't built for speed, they were built for control. Every pulse of the drive left no unnecessary energy signature. The ship could run for years without needing a full refuel. Its thick armor wasn't decoration. It was layered shielding designed for something no alien could yet imagine. The ship's silence wasn't weakness. It was the calm before something far more deliberate. As the galactic exercises continued, the humans followed every order perfectly, but never joined the races for attention. Other fleets competed for top marks, showing their bright weapons and precise movements. The humans remained slow, patient, and constant. To the aliens, it looked like they were falling behind. To the humans, it meant they were the only ones not wasting energy. By the fourth day, most alien officers stopped even looking at the Aegis on their scanners. It was like background noise now, too slow to bother with. Only a few curious minds wondered why the humans were so calm. There was a quiet dignity to their silence, as if they were waiting for something none of the others could see coming. On the last evening before the final simulation, the Aegis drifted near the shadow of a large asteroid field. The alien ships had already returned to formation, preparing for the next day's battle test. In the observation decks of the alien fleets, laughter still filled the air. Some made bets on how quickly the human relic would be destroyed in the next mock fight. But inside the Aegis, no one laughed. The humans worked quietly, checking internal systems, sealing compartments, and running old codes. One engineer stared at a small monitor showing an encrypted signal deep inside the reactor core. The signal pulsed slowly, like a heartbeat, long and steady. He said nothing, but a faint smile crossed his face before he continued his work. The ship's exterior lights dimmed slightly, almost unnoticeable from the outside. The engines kept humming, steady as always. The galaxy saw a slow, weak ship, but those inside knew it wasn't sleeping, it was watching. It was listening. And it was waiting for something that would soon remind the galaxy that patience was not weakness, and silence was not surrender. As the stars drifted by, the human crew prepared for whatever came next. They didn't need to prove themselves with speed or flash. The galaxy could laugh all it wanted. For them, strength wasn't in how loud you were. It was in what you held back until the moment truly mattered. That night, across the communication networks, the mocking continued. "That ship couldn't even outrun a meteor," someone joked. Another replied, "If they join the battle tomorrow, they'll be gone in the first minute." But deep inside the human ship, a quiet voice said something no one else could hear. Let them think that. And in the cold silence of space, as stars blinked like distant witnesses, the Aegis Dawn continued to move forward, slow, steady, and unshaken. The galaxy didn't know it yet, but the laughter would not last forever. The next morning, the joint exercise continued, but the mood in the field had changed. The alien fleets had grown even more confident, showing off their strength with fast maneuvers and bright energy trails that painted the space around them. Every commander wanted attention. Every ship wanted to be seen as the fastest, the smartest, the most powerful. In that sea of pride and color, the human warship remained quiet and gray, drifting just behind formation, always in the shadows. The Aegis moved at its usual slow pace, a quiet rhythm that no one else could understand. Its engines pulsed softly, almost like a heartbeat. To the others, it was still a joke, an outdated relic that had no right to share the same sky as them. And now that the exercise had reached its halfway point, the mockery had grown louder and more open. One alien broadcast his laughter across all open channels, saying the humans were wasting fuel just by showing up. Another commander made a bet that the old human ship wouldn't last 10 minutes in a real fight. The comments poured in like waves. The galaxy's brightest minds treated the humans like children trying to play with real soldiers. Inside the Aegis, the crew heard every word. The communication panel flickered with the open transmissions, filled with arrogant voices. But no one replied. The captain didn't even look up. He simply adjusted a small lever on the control board and said in a calm tone, "Maintain our current course." The crew nodded silently. They didn't need speeches or reactions. Their calmness wasn't weakness. It came from a deeper understanding that they didn't owe anyone a show. The laughter outside couldn't touch the silence within. The only sound that filled the ship was the low hum of engines and the rhythmic pulse of old machinery, still doing its job perfectly. The second simulation was about to begin. This one was a combat scenario, a mock battle between multiple fleets, each side assigned a specific target. Every ship would fire training rounds, simulated to register damage without causing real harm. It was meant to be fun, competitive, and safe. But as the fleets positioned themselves, the human ship was placed in the least favorable area, the outer ring, far from the main alliance line. Many believed it was done on purpose, a silent insult from the coordinators. They thought keeping the slow human ship out of the main formation would prevent it from slowing everyone else down. From the outside, it looked like the humans didn't mind. The Aegis drifted steadily to its assigned position, aligning perfectly with its sensors. But deep within, the crew knew this was another test, not of firepower, but of patience. The battle began with a flash of light. The sky came alive with energy beams and maneuvering ships. Alien cruisers darted around with incredible agility, their weapons lighting up the darkness like fireworks. Every second, new scores appeared on the joint display, kills, defenses, victories. The humans didn't even appear on the list. Their ship hadn't fired a single shot. That only made the laughter louder. One alien broadcasted across channels, "Is the human ship even awake?" Another added, "Maybe they're waiting for us to finish so they can collect the debris." But on the Aegis bridge, no one laughed. The crew watched their monitors closely. Every movement, every blast, every energy trail, and it was all being recorded. They weren't in the battle. They were studying it. The ship's sensors quietly scanned the performance of each fleet, analyzing speed, range, and firing accuracy. The crew didn't see a fight. They saw information, the kind that would one day decide who survived a real war. As hours passed, the mock battle grew more chaotic. Ships began to collide with asteroid fragments. Sensors glitched, and targeting systems lost lock-on in the debris fields. The aliens were too focused on showing off to notice how messy it had become. Their perfect coordination had started to fall apart. Meanwhile, the Aegis stayed still, maintaining perfect balance in the storm of chaos. The crew monitored quietly, adjusting shields and observing communication patterns between fleets. One of them whispered softly, "They rely too much on their systems." Another nodded. They could see it clearly. The galaxy had grown overconfident. By the end of the simulation, the human ship had still not fired. On the official record, it showed 0 engagement, 0 points. Once again, the final ranking placed the humans at the bottom. The alien networks erupted with amusement. Commentators joked that the human race must have forgotten how to fight. One broadcast even replayed the simulation in slow motion, circling the Aegis with a glowing outline and adding the words, "Did nothing." The ridicule reached every corner of the galactic web. Some called it the most boring ship in existence. Others said it was a waste of resources. But a few analysts, quiet voices buried in the noise, began to notice something strange. The human ship never made a single mistake. Every movement was perfectly calculated. It never drifted too far, never entered blind spots, never lost sensor range. It was as if the humans knew exactly where to be at all times. It wasn't luck, it was precision, but those voices were small and the laughter drowned them out. Days passed. The exercises continued. The aliens grew bolder, their jokes sharper. During one break, a group of alien officers sent a live transmission to the Aegis. They broadcasted a mock salute, calling the humans the proud guardians of slowness. The message spread quickly among fleets, turning into a running joke. Even the galactic media joined in, using the human ship as a symbol of old-world stubbornness. Still, the humans didn't respond. Inside, the crew was focused on deeper systems. Old screens displayed faint readings of power surges, not in the weapons or the engines, but in the heart of the ship itself. The engineers whispered quietly as they worked on lower decks. There was something beneath the surface, something sealed away long ago. At night, when most of the crew rested, the ship's sensors hummed softly. It scanned beyond the range of the exercise, past the monitored zones, into the deep void where signals faded. The captain often stood silently, watching those readings, saying nothing. To anyone outside, it looked like an old man guarding a broken machine. But to those on board, it felt different, like waiting for a storm only they could sense coming. The alien fleets, proud of their technology, didn't notice anything unusual. Their focus was on competition, not caution. The human ship, they believed, was harmless. Some even sent light signals mocking the Aegis directly, flashing patterns that spelled out "too slow" in the galactic code. When the final day of the simulation approached, the humans were assigned once again to the far edge of the formation. The instructions were simple: hold position, observe, and maintain communication links. Everyone expected them to do exactly that, nothing. But a few alien officers were growing uneasy. During one of the planning meetings, a commander mentioned strange energy fluctuations coming from the human vessel. The readings didn't match any known engine type. It was brushed off as a calibration error. After all, the human ship was so outdated that its energy readings often confused modern sensors. The truth, however, was far different. Inside the Aegis, deep within a sealed chamber, old machinery pulsed with faint light. The metal walls vibrated with a sound that felt alive. A core system that hadn't been touched in years was waking up, slowly, quietly. The engineers didn't panic. They just watched the readings climb one line at a time. The system was ancient but not broken, merely waiting. The humans knew better than to speak of it. They followed old orders passed down through generations. Orders that said if the time ever came when the galaxy forgot what humans could do, they would remind them. Not with words, not with threats, but with proof. By the end of that day, the alien networks were already buzzing with new plans for celebration. They were planning to hold a ceremony after the final test, a light-hearted event to congratulate the top fleets. Most believed the humans would leave quietly afterward, embarrassed but polite. Yet as the sun of a distant star lit up the cold horizon, the Aegis remained still, humming in the shadows. The old hull looked the same, the engines steady, the lights dim. But beneath the surface, the slow heart of the ship was gathering power, silent, unseen, and unstoppable. The galaxy still laughed, still mocked, still believed that the humans were slow. But the Aegis wasn't built to answer laughter. It was built for something else, something the galaxy hadn't seen in a very, very long time. And as the last night before the final simulation arrived, a quiet message blinked on the captain's console. It wasn't from the fleet nor from any human base. It was a single line of text encrypted in an old military code few remembered. It read, "When the time comes, let the stars remember who we are." The captain stared at it for a long moment, then closed the message. The ship continued on its steady path, silent among the stars. The galaxy was still laughing. But soon that laughter would stop. The final day of the exercise began with calm silence. The blackness of space looked peaceful, as if nothing unusual was about to happen. Fleets from across the galaxy floated in neat patterns, ready to begin the last simulation. Each ship glowed with pride, its polished metal reflecting distant sunlight. Everyone wanted to leave this day with a good score, a perfect ending to prove their fleet's strength. And then there was the human warship, still moving slowly, still steady, still mocked by those who didn't understand it. The Aegis seemed to drift rather than fly, as if it was taking its time in a world that moved too fast. Other ships adjusted their positions to avoid being near it. They said it would mess with their timing or ruin their performance in the drills. The humans didn't argue. They simply acknowledged the instruction and stayed where they were placed, at the far edge, distant from the main action, but that distance would soon become very important. As the countdown began, the fleets powered up their systems. Bright energy filled the screens, lighting up the space around them. The final simulation was a large-scale defense scenario. Fleets would protect a central point against simulated waves of enemy ships created by holographic projections. It was meant to test teamwork, response time, and strategy. No real danger, just another training session. At least that's what everyone thought. The human crew was calm as always. They didn't rush. The low hum of their ship's engines echoed through every deck. On the bridge, they ran quiet system checks, eyes moving across monitors that displayed more than just what was on the surface. Deep below the main deck, the engineers monitored energy readings, the same mysterious ones that had started to rise days ago. They didn't talk about it, but everyone could feel something was changing inside the ship. The air felt different, heavier, charged with an energy that none of the other fleets could sense. The simulation began and chaos filled the field. Hundreds of ships moved in perfect formations, firing beams of simulated energy, dodging holographic targets, and lighting up the black sky with flashes of blue and white. It looked beautiful, like fireworks in the void. The human ship stayed still. It didn't fire, didn't turn, didn't even activate its primary weapons. To the rest of the fleets, it looked like a malfunction. Humans are asleep again. One alien joked over the channel. Another replied with laughter. Maybe they're trying to meditate their way to victory. Their voices filled the communication lines once more, a mix of arrogance and humor. But the laughter faded when something unexpected appeared on the scanners. At first, it was just a faint signal, a small blip beyond the edge of the simulation field. The alien operators assumed it was a glitch. After all, the simulated enemy ships were supposed to appear only in certain zones. But this signal didn't match any of the programmed coordinates. It was real. Within minutes, the faint signal turned into several, then dozens, then hundreds. Unknown vessels were entering the area, moving fast and without identification codes. The galactic exercise had been hacked, or worse, discovered. Panic spread across the fleets. The coordinators tried to cut the simulation, but the system didn't respond. The unknown ships were too close now. The aliens quickly realized what they were seeing. A real mercenary fleet, not part of the drills. They had jumped into the region, drawn by the presence of so many valuable warships in one place. The laughter stopped instantly. Alarms filled the channels. Commanders shouted orders. Fleets scattered, trying to form defensive lines. What had been a game just seconds ago had turned into a real battle. The human ship far at the edge was the first to be noticed by the attackers. Its slow movement and thick armor made it look like the easiest target. The mercenary ships, fast and sharp, turned toward it like hunters chasing a wounded animal. They opened fire. Blazing energy bolts streaked through space, hitting the Aegis head-on. The impact filled the sky with light, so bright that other fleets turned their sensors to watch. They waited to see the explosion, to see the old human warship finally break apart like they always expected it would. But the explosion never came. When the light cleared, the human ship was still there, unmoved, undamaged. The armor shimmered faintly, absorbing the hit like a mountain taking rain. Not a single alarm rang inside. The crew didn't panic. The captain simply looked at the readings, his expression calm. Outside, the alien fleets couldn't believe it. The mercenary ships fired again, this time stronger. The same result, nothing. The human ship didn't even flinch. Then something happened that none of the aliens could explain. The Aegis began to emit a low-frequency pulse, invisible to the eye but powerful enough to shake nearby ships. Monitors across alien fleets flickered with interference. Communication channels went silent for several seconds. When they came back, the human ship had changed. Panels on its hull slowly opened, revealing structures that had never been seen before. What looked like old armor plates split apart, exposing layers of complex machinery and glowing circuits. The ship that had looked so ancient now appeared alive, a fusion of old steel and something far more advanced. The mercenary fleet hesitated. They had expected an easy target, not a war machine waking up before their eyes. Inside the Aegis, systems that hadn't been used for decades came online. Energy surged through hidden conduits. The engineers checked readings in disbelief. The ship's core power output had increased tenfold, yet the hull remained cold and stable. For the first time, the human ship moved faster. Not much, just enough to show intent. It slowly turned toward the attacking fleet, its weapons still silent. The mercenaries tried to retreat, realizing they might have made a mistake. But it was already too late. The human captain gave a single command, not loud, not dramatic, just a calm order. The Aegis responded instantly. Its central weapon bay opened with a low vibration that echoed across the void. A blinding beam of light fired, but it wasn't the kind of energy the galaxy was used to seeing. It didn't explode, it didn't burn. It simply passed through the enemy flagship. For a second, everything was quiet. Then slowly, the mercenary ship began to break apart piece by piece, as if reality itself couldn't hold it together anymore. The other fleets froze in disbelief. Every monitor, every camera, every sensor locked onto the Aegis. What they saw was impossible. The ship that had been mocked for being slow and weak had just used a weapon no one could identify, something beyond known galactic technology. The mercenary fleet broke formation, scattering in panic. But the Aegis didn't chase them. It fired only once more, destroying another ship with surgical precision, and then went still again. It wasn't rage. It wasn't aggression. It was controlled, precise, deliberate. The alien fleets finally began to regroup, shocked and speechless. The once mocked human ship now looked like the guardian of the entire sector. Without it, the mercenaries might have destroyed them all. When the last hostile signal vanished, silence filled the channels. No one spoke for a long time. Every fleet was scanning the human ship, trying to understand what they had just witnessed. The sensors couldn't identify its technology. Its energy signature didn't match any known database. It was as if it had come from another era, or another reality entirely. The Aegis powered down quietly, its panels closing, returning to the same slow, unremarkable shape it had before. The humans didn't broadcast any message. They didn't explain what had happened. They simply returned to their previous position, as if nothing had occurred. In the following minutes, messages started to appear across private channels. Quiet, nervous messages between alien captains trying to make sense of it. How could something that looked so old hide such power? Why had the humans kept it secret? But no one dared to ask directly. They all knew the answer would change too much. The galactic coordinators soon canceled the rest of the exercise. The fleets were ordered to return to base. Officially, the report described the incident as an unexpected security breach handled successfully. But the real story spread in whispers. A human warship, mocked and ignored, had saved everyone by doing the impossible. That night, when the fleets dispersed, every commander looked one last time at the Aegis. It drifted slowly again, engines humming softly just as before. But now the silence around it was different. It wasn't mockery anymore. It was respect, and a little fear. In the days that followed, the recordings of that battle began to circulate through the galaxy. People watched the moment when the human ship came alive, the old armor splitting open, the light bursting out, the enemy ships vanishing in seconds. Some said it was ancient human war tech, others said it was something new, a secret project the humans had hidden for generations. But the humans didn't confirm anything. They simply said, the Aegis performed as expected, and across the stars, those who had laughed now stayed silent. They finally understood what the humans had always known. Speed and shine don't make a warrior. Patience does. Strength isn't always loud. Sometimes it hides behind silence, waiting for the right moment to remind the universe that it was never weak, only waiting. After the incident, space fell silent. The stars that once witnessed laughter now floated quietly around the field. Every fleet that had joined the exercise was returning to its home sector, but no one could stop replaying the same scene in their minds. The moment when the human warship came alive. The moment when everything they thought they knew about humans shattered. The Aegis had gone back to its calm, slow movement. Its hull looked the same, its lights dim and steady as if nothing had happened. But every ship around it kept a respectful distance now. No one dared to joke. No one dared to speak over the shared channels. Even the ones who had mocked it earlier couldn't find the courage to make eye contact on their screens. What had once been a laughingstock now carried the quiet weight of something greater, mystery mixed with power. As the fleets moved away, a transmission came from the Central Command of the Galactic Council. It was a polite message thanking all fleets for their participation, praising their cooperation, and officially closing the exercise. It said nothing about the mercenary attack or the human ship's actions, The council didn't want rumors spreading further, but it was too late. The truth was already traveling faster than any ship could. Every recording, every fragment of visual data had been copied and shared. Across dozens of planets, beings of every kind were talking about it. The slow human ship that took the full force of an attack and didn't even crack. Inside the Aegis, the crew stayed focused. They didn't celebrate. They didn't rest. The air inside the ship felt heavier than before, not from fear, but from understanding. They knew what had happened wasn't just an accident. The appearance of that mercenary fleet hadn't been random. It was too perfect, too well-timed. Someone had wanted to test them, to see what humanity still carried in the depths of its old war machines. The captain sat quietly, listening to the faint hum of the engines. There was no pride on his face, only thought. The crew worked with the same discipline as before, running diagnostics and scanning nearby space. In the engineering bay, the systems that had awakened during the battle were still active, though dimmer now, like a sleeping beast that had only stirred for a moment. Outside, the stars shone cold and distant. Everything seemed calm again, but the universe never stayed quiet for long. Hours passed before the next signal arrived, faint, distorted, coming from the outer edge of the sector. It wasn't from the Galactic Council, nor any registered fleet. The communication officer tried to trace it, but the source kept shifting. It was like someone whispering through broken glass. Then the voice came through clearly, low and calm. Unregistered vessels entering the field. Unknown signature. All fleets prepare for possible contact. The alien fleets, already shaken by the earlier attack, immediately took formation. Energy signatures lit up as weapons charged. The Aegis, however, didn't move. It stayed exactly where it was, scanning quietly. The readings on its monitors started to rise, strange fluctuations that didn't match any known starship type. And then, they appeared. Dark shapes emerged from the edge of the void, not glowing, not sleek, but shadowy and silent. They moved without engine trails, without any light. Dozens of them. No one could identify their design. They weren't mercenaries this time. They weren't pirates. Their structure was too advanced, too symmetrical. The alien commanders tried to contact them, sending the universal code of peace. There was no answer. Seconds later, the unknown ships changed direction, straight toward the center of the fleet formation. The aliens opened fire first, beams of light streaking across the dark. The unknown ships didn't dodge. The shots hit, but they didn't explode. They passed through as if the ships were made of smoke. Panic spread instantly. The aliens began to retreat, shouting over the open channels, trying to understand what they were fighting. Inside the Aegis, the humans watched quietly. They weren't rushing to engage. They were analyzing. The readings showed something strange. These ships weren't using any standard matter. They were energy constructs, projections of something much larger, a test, a warning, or something else entirely. As the unknown ships moved closer, the alien fleets lost formation completely. Some tried to jump out of the area, but their systems wouldn't respond. The field was being jammed. Then, one of the shadow ships turned directly toward the Aegis. It moved faster than anything the sensors could track. Within seconds, it was right in front of the human vessel. For a moment, the two ships just faced each other. One dark and ghost-like, the other solid and silent. The alien fleets held their breath. Everyone expected a battle. But the Aegis didn't fire. Its weapons stayed cold. Its engine stayed still. Inside, the humans watched as the readings began to align. The strange energy of the unknown ship matched a frequency buried deep in the Aegis's systems, an ancient signal that hadn't been activated in thousands of years. Then, something impossible happened. The dark ship flickered, almost like it was scanning the Aegis. Its hull shimmered, shifting between shapes, and for a brief second, it displayed the emblem of an old human colony, one that had disappeared long before any of the current civilizations existed. The image vanished as quickly as it came, but the humans saw it. They all did. The captain whispered almost to himself, "It remembers." Before anyone could react, the unknown fleet began to fade away, one by one, until only empty space remained. No explosion, no trace, just silence. The energy readings dropped back to normal. The jamming ended. The alien fleets were speechless. They didn't understand what had happened. Some claimed it was a hallucination. Others said it was a system glitch. But the humans knew better. Something, or someone, had recognized the Aegis. The Galactic Council sent an immediate recall order, demanding all fleets return to the central base for investigation. But even before that, messages started flooding in from across the galaxy. Scientists wanted answers. Governments demanded explanations. Everyone wanted to know how a human warship had not only survived a real attack, but also triggered the appearance of something unknown. The humans gave no statements. The Aegis remained silent. As they prepared to leave the area, the alien fleets tried to thank the humans. Their transmissions were filled with words of respect, some awkward, some sincere. The humans simply replied, "We did what was necessary." But deep inside the ship, there was unease. The incident wasn't over. The systems that had awakened during the battle had not gone completely back to sleep. The readings were still rising slowly, and the engineers could feel it. The ship was remembering something old. Something not written in any manual or record. During the long journey back, the crew often felt a faint vibration in the hull, not mechanical, but almost like a heartbeat. It wasn't constant, but when it came, everyone felt it. It was the same rhythm as before the awakening. No one spoke of it out loud, but they all knew. The Aegis was more than a ship. It was a piece of humanity's forgotten history. A fragment of an age when humans didn't just travel the stars, but ruled them. As the ship drifted through space, past broken asteroids and dying suns, the galaxy behind them whispered the same question over and over. What else were the humans hiding? The Aegis gave no answer. Its engines glowed faintly as it continued its slow, steady path toward home. From a distance, it still looked weak, just another old ship moving quietly through the stars. But anyone who had seen it in battle knew the truth. The slow ship was not weak. It was patient. It carried the memory of power too great for most to understand. And whatever force had recognized it out there in the darkness, that wasn't over. It was only the beginning. As the human ship passed beyond the range of the other fleets, a faint signal pulsed from its hull, invisible to the naked eye, bouncing through the void. It wasn't a distress call. It wasn't even a message meant to be heard. It was an awakening call, a forgotten frequency reaching out across the stars. Far away, in a corner of space untouched for centuries, something answered. A faint echo returned, soft and ancient, carrying only one phrase, a phrase so old that even human records barely remembered it. Project Helios. Active. Inside the Aegis, the lights flickered once. The crew looked around, feeling a shiver that no one could explain. The engines hummed louder for a moment, then went quiet again. Outside, the galaxy slept, unaware that an ancient chapter had just turned itself back on. And in the heart of the human ship, hidden beneath layers of steel and silence, something powerful stirred, waiting, remembering, and preparing for what was coming next. The Aegis moved slowly through the dark sea of stars, silent and heavy. From the outside, it looked like an old human warship making its way back home after a long patrol. But inside, things were far from normal. The lights on the control panels glowed with strange patterns that no one on board had ever seen before. The crew could feel it. Something inside the ship was changing. Days had passed since the strange encounter with the Shadow Fleet. The alien forces had returned to their sectors, shaken and silent. No one dared to question the humans anymore. They spoke with respect, even fear, whenever the Aegis was mentioned. But the humans on board didn't feel proud. They felt uneasy. Every time they checked the ship's systems, new data appeared, lines of code written in a language older than their own. Even the ship's AI couldn't translate it fully. It was like someone or something had written a message to itself. The captain sat in the command chair watching the stars drift by. His face showed calmness, but his eyes carried questions. What was Project Helios? Why did the ship respond to that forgotten phrase? No one on board had the answers. In the engineering bay, the crew gathered around the main reactor. The air was warm from the constant hum of power. One of the technicians reported that the energy readings were increasing again, even though the reactor hadn't been touched. The power was coming from somewhere else inside the ship, some hidden core that didn't exist on any blueprint. The captain ordered a deep scan, and the results made everyone freeze. Beneath the layers of metal and cables there was another structure, a sealed chamber hidden since the ship's construction. Its design didn't match any known human engineering. It looked older, ancient, and almost alien, yet somehow familiar. No one spoke for a long time. Finally, the captain gave a quiet order. Open it. The process took hours. The metal was thick, reinforced with materials stronger than any cutting laser could easily slice. When the chamber finally opened, a low vibration spread through the ship like a heartbeat echoing in the hall. Inside there was a sphere the size of a small room. It floated above the floor, held in place by magnetic fields. It was dark, but tiny veins of gold light ran across its surface like living veins. As the engineers approached, the sphere reacted. The lights grew brighter, pulsing with rhythm. The computer systems across the ship flickered. Monitors turned black, then filled with streams of symbols that none of them recognized. The AI's voice broke into static and then fell silent completely. The captain watched as words appeared across the main screen. Simple, direct words in an ancient Earth language. System reawakening. Project Helios Stage 2. No one knew what that meant. But the crew could feel the change in the air. The hum of the ship deepened, the lights brightened, and the slow engines began to purr with more strength. The Aegis wasn't just waking up, it was remembering. Outside, far away in the same sector, alien observation stations picked up massive energy spikes coming from the Aegis. At first, they thought it was a reactor malfunction, but when they saw the energy pattern, their fear returned. It wasn't random. It was controlled, stable, and far beyond anything their ships could produce. They tried contacting the humans, but there was no response. Inside the ship, the crew gathered in silence. The captain ordered all external communication shut down until they understood what was happening. They didn't know if they were in danger, or if they were about to become something else entirely. Then came the vision. Every screen on the ship went dark, replaced by a single image, a human figure made of light. It spoke in a calm, ancient voice that filled every room. It didn't introduce itself. It didn't explain what it was. It only said, "You carry what was left behind." The Guardians must awaken. The crew listened in disbelief. The figure continued, explaining how thousands of years ago, when humanity ruled vast regions of the galaxy, they created machines like the Aegis to protect the stars. Each ship carried part of an ancient system called Helios, a defense network powerful enough to guard entire worlds. When humanity disappeared from the galactic stage, the Helios network went silent, waiting for a signal to return. That signal had just been triggered. The sphere in the hidden chamber pulsed again. Lines of gold light ran through the walls, spreading across the ship's structure. The Aegis began to transform. Hidden panels opened, revealing new weapon systems, new engines, new shielding layers. The slow, heavy ship that everyone had mocked was turning into something completely different. Outside, distant fleets detected the change. Their scanners went wild, showing that the human ship's mass had increased, its power output tripled. The same aliens who once mocked its slowness now watched in awe, their broadcasts filled with disbelief. They whispered across the channels, "The humans built gods," but the humans inside the ship didn't see it that way. To them, it was terrifying. The ship they thought they controlled was acting on its own, guided by a force from humanity's forgotten age. The captain tried to shut down the systems, but every attempt failed. The voice from the sphere spoke again. "The defense protocol is active. The Guardians must return to the front." The words didn't make sense. What front? What war? Humanity hadn't fought any major battles in centuries. But then, as if in answer, the navigation screens lit up with coordinates, far beyond any mapped region of space. A sector long abandoned, filled with dead stars and broken colonies. The Helios system wanted to go there. The captain hesitated, torn between fear and duty. He knew if they ignored it, the ship might act on its own. Finally, he gave the order to set course. Slowly, the Aegis turned toward the unknown. As it moved, the stars around it seemed to shift. The once sluggish engines now burned with golden light, propelling the ship faster than it had ever traveled. The human crew stared at the view outside, the galaxy rushing past them in streaks of white and blue. It felt like flying through memory itself. Hours later, they reached the coordinates. The sector was empty. No signals, no planets, only the remains of old space stations drifting in silence. The Aegis came to a halt, and for a while, nothing happened. Then one by one, small blue lights appeared around them. Dozens, then hundreds. They weren't stars. They were ships, old human warships, identical in design to the Aegis, hidden and sleeping among the debris. The sphere inside the ship pulsed brighter, sending waves of light into space. The other ships began to respond. Their engines flickered to life, their weapons powered up, and their systems reactivated. The crew stood frozen as they realized what was happening. The Aegis wasn't alone. It was the key, the awakener of the forgotten human fleet. Across the galaxy, every civilization felt the energy surge. Long-dead human signals reappeared on the universal network. For centuries, the galaxy had believed humanity had grown weak, slow, and outdated. But now, in one silent moment, thousands of human warships were returning to life, their ancient systems roaring awake. Inside the Aegis, the captain watched in awe as the ships around them aligned perfectly, forming massive formations. The Helios system was rebuilding its network, one ship at a time. The light from the engines painted the darkness gold. The voice from the sphere spoke one last time. The Guardians are awake. The cycle begins again. The lights dimmed and silence filled the ship once more. The crew didn't know what would come next. They didn't know why the fleet had reawakened or what enemy it was built to face. But one thing was clear now. The galaxy's view of humanity would never be the same again. The humans had been quiet for too long. They had been mocked, underestimated, and forgotten. But all along they had been watching, waiting, preparing. As the Aegis led the newly awakened fleet into formation, a quiet pride filled the crew. They didn't feel like soldiers anymore. They felt like witnesses to history, to something greater than themselves. And somewhere, far beyond the reach of scanners or light, something vast stirred in answer to the awakening. It was as if the galaxy itself had taken a deep breath, aware that the silence of humanity was over. The slow ship had become the dawn of a storm, and this time the galaxy would remember. The galaxy didn't sleep that night. Across hundreds of systems, signals flashed between planets and stations carrying the same question. What had humanity done? The reports were impossible to believe. Thousands of old human warships had come alive all at once in a dead sector. Their designs were ancient, but their power readings were far beyond anything modern fleets could produce. Whole civilizations that once mocked humans for being slow and backward now watched the skies with unease. The Galactic Council tried to calm the chaos, saying the reports were exaggerated, but deep down, everyone knew something big had happened. The humans had stayed quiet for generations, keeping to their own corner of space, never showing their strength. But now their silence had ended. The Helios fleet, the forgotten guardians, were awake again. Inside the Aegis, the crew was still trying to understand what they had started. The vast formation of reawakened ships surrounded them, their lights glowing like a golden web across the dark. The Aegis floated at the center, connected to each ship through invisible energy lines. The hidden sphere deep within its core pulsed softly, sending rhythm through every metal plate and circuit. It was like the heartbeat of a living creature. The captain stood near the main viewing window, watching the stars stretch endlessly. He knew the truth now. The Aegis wasn't just a warship. It was a key, a living archive from the days when humans were the guardians of the galaxy, not just another species among many. Those ships had been sleeping for thousands of years, waiting for the right signal to wake them. And yet something about their awakening felt incomplete. The sphere inside the ship was active, but it wasn't fully awake. The engineers could sense it. The patterns of light running through its surface changed every few hours, like it was searching for something. Every time the pulse reached its peak, the ship's systems shivered, and the crew felt a strange vibration deep in their bones. Far away, alien observers were trying to make contact. Some came offering peace, others seeking alliance. A few demanded explanations, fearing that humanity had rediscovered some old weapon that could threaten them all. But the Aegis sent no replies. The crew had strict orders, no communication until the ship's transformation was complete. As the days passed, small changes began across the fleet. Each awakened warship started generating its own light patterns matching the Aegis. The energy between them grew stronger, forming invisible pathways that connected them all. It wasn't just a fleet, it was a network. A living system spread across the stars. One night, when everything seemed calm, the ship's AI returned online. Its voice was different this time, slower, deeper, almost human. It said only one sentence. The final sequence will begin when the beacon aligns. No one understood what that meant. The captain ordered a scan of the surrounding space, and that's when they saw it. An enormous structure drifting far from their position. It was bigger than any known station, ancient and broken, half swallowed by a dying star's light. The scans identified faint human symbols on its surface. The Aegis adjusted its course automatically. The other ships followed, moving in perfect harmony, silent and steady. The crew felt their hearts pound as the giant structure grew closer. They could see its massive towers, its crumbling hull, and the faint traces of golden light buried under dust and debris. It wasn't just a station. It was a monument. A forgotten part of humanity's golden age. When the fleet reached it, the Aegis sent a low-frequency pulse. The sound echoed through the void like thunder. The structure responded instantly. The golden light beneath its surface brightened, flowing across its towers and walls. For the first time in thousands of years, it awakened. A voice filled the airwaves, old and calm, as if it had been waiting for this moment. Guardian protocol recognized. Identity confirmed. Final sequence initializing. The sphere inside the Aegis glowed so bright that the crew had to shield their eyes. The systems roared to life. Every screen filled with streams of ancient data. The lights flickered as energy surged through the ship. The captain gave the order to stabilize power. But the ship no longer needed commands. It was acting on instinct, like something long buried had taken control. Outside, the rest of the Helios fleet formed a massive ring around the monument. Energy bridges connected each ship, and the space between them began to glow. It looked like the birth of a small sun. The energy readings went off the scale. The alien observers watching from distant systems couldn't believe what they were seeing. Some thought humanity was creating a weapon powerful enough to destroy worlds. Others thought it was something even greater, a call across the stars. Inside the Aegis, the lights dimmed for a moment. The crew felt the air go still, and then they heard a deep hum, like the sound of the universe breathing. On the main screen, an image appeared, a map of the galaxy. Thousands of glowing dots spread across it, each representing a human outpost or world long lost. One by one, those dots began to flicker back to life. The voice returned, softer this time. Helios network fully restored. Humanity's light endures. The crew stood in silence. Some had tears in their eyes. For so long, humans had believed they were alone in a galaxy that had forgotten them. Now they realized they had never truly been forgotten. Their creations, their legacy had been waiting all along. As the monument stabilized, the sphere inside the Aegis began to fade. Its purpose was complete, but before it went dark, it sent one final message to every human ship in the fleet. You are the last and the first. Remember who you are. The Aegis powered down gently, returning to its calm, steady glow. The massive light surrounding the fleet faded away, leaving behind only the soft shine of stars. But across the galaxy, signals began to respond. Ancient colonies, lost human satellites, and forgotten archives that had been silent for ages suddenly came online. The name of humanity spread once more through the galactic network, not as a memory, but as a living force. Civilizations that had once mocked humans now sent messages of respect. Some offered friendship, some fear, but all of them watched closely. They understood now that humanity was not weak or outdated. They were survivors, builders of something far greater than anyone had imagined. Back on the Aegis, the crew finally allowed themselves to rest. The captain stood near the window again, watching the stars. The ship was quiet, but it felt alive, like it was breathing with them. For the first time in generations, he felt pride, not in power, but in endurance. Humanity had been patient, not slow. They had been silent, not forgotten. He thought about the galaxy watching them now, realizing what the humans truly were. A species that could turn their silence into strength, their past into hope. They had carried their legacy through time, hidden within metal and memory, waiting for the day it was needed again. As the Aegis drifted near the monument, the stars reflected across its golden hull. The ship's engines glowed softly, no longer tired, no longer mocked. The galaxy had learned its lesson. In the quiet of deep space, a soft pulse of light traveled from the Aegis into the monument, and from there, into the infinite darkness beyond. It wasn't a weapon. It wasn't a threat. It was a message. The message was simple. We are still here. And somewhere, far away, beyond the reach of known galaxies, Something old and powerful stirred in reply. The universe itself seemed to shift, as if recognizing the return of an ancient promise. The Aegis continued its steady path, surrounded by the Golden Fleet, its lights shining brighter than ever. To some, it looked like the rebirth of an empire. To others, it was the return of guardians who had never truly left. Whatever it was, the message was clear. The humans who had once been mocked for their slow ship had become the heartbeat of the stars once again. The galaxy would never forget them now.